If you want an exploration of America's class system and what it is that may cause poverty and inequality, then today's book just might be for you. Today I'll be covering Poverty by America by Matthew Desmond. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today we're taking a look at a book by Matthew Desmond. This is actually the second book of his that I read. His first book, Evicted, won Pulitzer Prize for nonfiction and was a fascinating look at some of the housing challenges of low-income people. He specifically looked in Wisconsin. This is a very different book. In some ways, it's essentially a sequel to that book in terms of looking at societal structures and what causes some of the problems that we have in terms of wealth inequality. In other ways, it's very different because it is by no means a close look at a problem in the same way that Evicted is. He spends lots of time with individuals seeing their specific problems. In this book, instead, he tries to look at a broader picture and tries to explain what it is that causes so many issues when it comes to trying to end any kind of systemic or intergenerational gaps in wealth. So this book, it provides a powerful and a thought-provoking look that challenges the individuals, the readers, to confront the uncomfortable truths about the causes of poverty in the United States. He combines a really rigorous research with some of his compelling storytelling that you saw in Evicted. In this case, he actually relies heavily on those experiences to paint a picture of poverty, and he demonstrated that it's not merely an unfortunate condition, but it's a manufactured one. And he demonstrates that it's something sustained by those who stand to benefit from it. And that is going to be the biggest argument of his book that some people are either going to really resonate with or take great issue with. And so he really strives throughout this book to try to connect all the dots between the different aspects of American life, like housing and labor and welfare and taxation. All these are going to be things that he's not just going to give one in-depth look at, but he's going to try and connect and show you how all of their interconnectedness is what leads to a system that keeps people impoverished. And he says that it is designed to keep them in their place because it helps to enrich the wealthy. His whole point is that this systemic perspective is crucial because as it shifts the focus from individual blame to collective responsibility, he's making it clear that poverty is a societal problem that requires a societal solution, and it's not just a matter of addressing individuals' attitudes and individuals' sense of perseverance or diligence or willingness to work hard. Similar to Evicted, the storytelling itself is a key part of it, and it's pretty easy to understand. At no point are you going to think, I didn't follow that macroeconomic train of thought or questions about taxes or any of that. He makes it a point of trying to be widely appealing, and I would say that that shows through in his careful use of numbers and statistics. He by no means gives some economic breakdown of why things are the way they are in a way that's going to be confusing, but I do think that his overall premise of trying to demonstrate how things are connected is a compelling approach, and I think that he does it pretty efficiently. I will say the thing that most people are probably going to find challenging if they read this, especially considering that the average person that's going to read this is probably going to be a relatively well-educated individual. That tends to be his demographic in this case. And in this, he calls on the readers and on the larger American populace to recognize their role in the system. And he encourages them to take action, something that you don't see in Evicted. And he essentially says that you need to be politically engaged and that you need to have more responsible consumer behavior. And he really advocates for major policy changes, which I certainly did not see in Evicted. And so he urges for a collective effort to dismantle the structures that have sustained poverty. And he argues that only by addressing the systemic root of the issue can real progress be made. The great example that he uses to help demonstrate that is checking accounts. Your average person is going to have a free checking account. Now, it may not draw much interest, and so they possibly think that having their money in their bank is how they are helping pay that bank. But this is really short-term money that has to remain liquid. And so that's actually not how a bank is generally going to pay for giving so many free checking accounts. The way they're going to do it, it's going to be through overdraft fees or having too low of a minimum balance, or all sorts of ways that are going to generally affect poorer people. So even your average middle-class person who has a free checking account, they are only able to have it because of a system that is supported by the most impoverished people in society. So that's the example he uses. And I think it does a good job at illustrating how everything is not only interconnected, but how everyone is more at fault than they realize. Who is this book for? Well, it's for anyone that is going to engage honestly with this argument. That does not mean you have to agree with everything he says. Like I said, he does not have a ton of numbers. So there are a lot of places where you could say, well, what are the numbers? What could we have in full discussion of this? And there's even a few times where he throws out some numbers and he even says, well, I don't know if that's really completely accurate. I think that there's room to argue one way or another. And I think that's a place to have a more fleshed out argument. Again, that's not really the premise of the book. So he might take a step back from that and say, well, that's not the exact argument I'm having. I'm trying to have a more holistic argument, but I still think that there's room to explore those individual points that he makes. So you don't have to agree with everything he says, but I definitely would say this book is for people that are open-minded about why poverty is so persistent. Who isn't this book for? Well, you're not going to enjoy this book if you have any issue with major government involvement. Obviously, if you're talking about any kind of policy-based reforms or changes, in this case, it's almost always going to be towards more government involvement, more government spending, and anyone that's going to take issue with that is really going to struggle with this book. I will say that's not the exclusive solution that he provides. He does look at other approaches that have nothing to do with policy changes and don't necessarily have anything to do with blaming the wealthiest or even the middle class individuals in the society, but he tries to give as many ideas as possible about how we could change systemic poverty. But many people are going to have very little interest in having a prolonged discussion about that, especially if they feel like they're going to be forced to concede their own advantages in life and where it has benefited them. That is who I would and wouldn't recommend this book for. Of course, it's going to be a highly controversial book in many circles, so I'm very much interested in seeing what other people have to say. Please let me know in the comments whether you liked this book, hated this book, you found elements of it engaging, you found elements of it repulsive, just anything. I would like to know what more people think about this book. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.